spread the word of peace around the world. Next, we would like to have the legacy of Hiroshima. She is, of course, you can read about her profile, the bio from in the program book, and she was the director of UNITAR. And after her term was over, she still remained in Hiroshima and to do a lot of peace work. And he is truly a global citizen, and she has experienced a lot of different things. So, Nasri, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I'm Azimi from Green Legacy. I am very honored to be given this wonderful opportunity. Now I'm going to make my speech in English.
I'm very honored to be here. This is not the first time I'm speaking to Rotary, because 2 or 3 times, thanks to Kawasuma-san and other friends at Rotary in Hiroshima, I had the privilege to speak to your groups. But I can say that I am truly impressed since yesterday by the scope and depth and diversity of what Rotary does. But as you just saw, maybe from Watanabe-san, my friend, sister, partner for Green Legacy Hiroshima, that she is in and of herself an entire global Rotary. And I think Watanabe-san puts to rest forever the fiction of Japanese woman as being weak. She's a dynamo in Hiroshima, and it has been really an honor and privilege for the last 2 years to work with her in setting up the Green Legacy Hiroshima initiative and expanding it globally. As my master, the Renaissance man, and the sole architect, I think, among our panel, Mr. Nishikori said earlier, I really feel as a global citizen. I'm born in Iran. I'm a Swiss national. My family is American, and my adopted home is Hiroshima. And when people ask me, why have you stayed in Hiroshima since you stepped down from your function at the UN, I always respond because I think it's a very important place for humanity, not just for the UN and certainly not just for the people of Hiroshima. And I think that in Hiroshima, I have not only encountered many people who understand that, but it has made the meaning of the saints and sages and wise men amongst us, people like Sir Joseph Rotblat, one of the founders of Pugwash, who kept saying, in the nuclear age, we must remember our humanity and forget everything else, because that's the #1 priority. And our humanity leads me to this image. This is one of thousands of images sent by a now superstar NASA astronaut by the name of Chris Hadfield. He's a Canadian. Are there any Canadians in the... He really should make you proud. And Chris Hadfield is obviously a top-notch scientist. He was the captain of the International Space Station, but he has been tweeting images from the sky, from the space station to Earth, literally daily, thousands of images. And I just chose this because it's so poetical. It's the moon rising over our Earth, covered by clouds. And I think people like him, scientists, are reminding us again and again of both the insignificance of all of us as a species, and also our significance in having discovered all this. So that is one version, and everything I'm hearing from Rotary is an attempt to remind us of the greatness of our species. But as I stand here, and I almost feel fraudulent, this image is of a child in Syria, and initially I had this page as Syria's children, and I changed it. It's just children in a place called Syria, and this is last year in June 2012. Last month, actually, the UN and other human rights organizations have come out with horrific renditions of what's happening to children in Syria. And honestly, I think that images like that must mobilize all of us. It's unacceptable. We have left these kids in a country tied up with people behaving as murderers and rapists. And so we have these two futures, these two presents and these two futures, and both of them representing our humanity, our common humanity. Tomoko just spoke about Hiroshima. I have worked and lived by the epicenter of the bomb now for more than 9 years. And it is quite remarkable that Hiroshima actually exists. For about 6 months after the bomb, 1/3 of the population had died. There was a great move and pressure to actually build Hiroshima elsewhere. And people rallied. They wanted to build at the place of their ancestors. But future leaders, present and future leaders, leadership does count. People have become cynical, saying that leadership is no longer important. It does count. Hiroshima was very fortunate to have Mayor Hamai. He was a staff of the city, and he was absolutely instrumental in bringing Hiroshima back to life. He was mayor for almost 4 terms, not consecutively. And just about everything you see, including the Peace Park, that we will see later, maybe you've already spent some time, was one of his brainchildren. Nishikori Sensei asked me to talk about the legacies of Hiroshima, and honestly, I didn't know which one to choose, so I have stayed with the philosophy that has been underlining Hiroshima's work for the last 68 years. And I think the first one is essential: to forgive, but not to forget. Every 6 August, we have here the ceremonies. It costs a lot of money for Hiroshima taxpayers, and this is by no accounts a wealthy city. Why? Because the people of Hiroshima decided they didn't want to waste time hating. They would forgive, but they would never forget. And I think all the testimony that you've been hearing of activities that people in Hiroshima are doing are a reminder not to forget. We will forgive, but we won't forget. And I was always reminded of a friend who said, it seems in so many parts of the world, we forget, but we don't forgive. We no longer know why we are at war and conflict. But we continue because it's become such a habit. The second legacy of Hiroshima, I think, is where we have all failed. Hiroshima has failed, but we have failed. Yesterday at the working group meeting, I heard this very beautiful person, I hope he's with us today, from North Carolina, a former American serviceman who was in the battles of Okinawa. Are you here with us today? He's not here. Well, anyway, his intervention both yesterday and today really affected me. He rose and said that he was very happy that he had survived, and he wanted to see if there were any Japanese in the audience who might have been in the Battle of Okinawa. And then he went on to say that the military-industrial complex was an absolute evil, and no other than General Eisenhower had alerted us almost 60 years ago. Is that where we are going to channel our resources? And if I had to make one plea, as someone who spent her career at the UN, where we talk a lot, but as somebody said earlier, we don't always walk the walk. If I have one plea to Rotary, because you're all business-savvy people, is truly to mobilize your 1-2 million people to take on the wasteful emphasis that we have on arms. Let me tell you just briefly why. This is from the CIPRI yearbook, 2012. The figures haven't changed. I summarize, because the figures are so big, they may be confusing, but roughly we spend every year $250 per every man, woman, and child on planet Earth in the arms industry. $250 per every inhabitant of Earth. Imagine the things we could do with all that money. And this is excluding the nuclear armaments. And if you go do some search, there's some wonderful groups trying to expose what it means. Countries that are spending triple, 4 times, 5 times more on arms than they are on health and education combined. We shouldn't be surprised that we have so many wars. I mean, those weapons at some point need to be used. Sadly for my American friends, where Rotary has been created, and I think that would be the biggest challenge. The United States alone spends about 40% of the global total of arms. China, 8.2. Of course, those figures are shifting now. As we know, China is really emphasizing military spending. And according to the Federation of American Scientists, roughly, the official figures we know now are 17,000 nuclear warheads. Of those, 4,300 are operational, and 1,800 are on what we call trigger hair alert, means they can be used very quickly. In the US, over the next 10 years, if the Obama administration cannot challenge the status quo, the expenditure on nuclear weapons is estimated to be $640 billion. That's $64 billion per year. And just to give you an indication from what my friend Alex Mejia said yesterday, the UN budget per year is $5 billion. The US will be spending $64 billion a year on the nuclear weapon industry over the next 10 years. I invite you to look up the work of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, IPPNW. They actually had their world conference also in Hiroshima last year, and they have done some studies. These are physicians, they're doctors, and they have done some studies on the impact of just a fraction of the nuclear bombs that we have at disposal going off. And it's really chilling reading.